All right, we are recording. So now I'm going to share my screen again. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Miss Yazdani, and today I'll be presenting on the UC personal insight questions. All right, so just as a reminder, we host these workshops every Wednesday between 12 and 1 p.m., and you can sign up to attend in your Naviance account. And this is a picture of myself and the college coordinator at Los Altos High School. So if you ever need help with, your college applications, or you have questions about college visits, things like that, feel free to reach out to us and we'd love to help you out. Okay, so these are just some basics when it comes to the UC personal insight questions. So you have 8 to choose from, and you'll respond to 4 out of the 8 personal insight question prompts. There's not a word minimum, but the UCs give you no more than 350 words to respond to each of these questions. But most students can respond pretty thoroughly within 250 to 350 words. So just because they allow you to use a maximum of 350, don't feel the need to use up every single word. If you feel like you can get your point across pretty thoroughly and clearly within 250 words, that's perfectly fine. How to choose a prompt. So we encourage students to choose 4 prompts that you feel like you connect with pretty well, that you feel like you can relate to, or you have experiences that you can talk about. Don't pick a prompt because you're trying to figure out which one the admissions counselor would want you to choose. Choose one that you feel like, again, you really connect with and you feel like you can speak to. The UCs are constantly telling us that the personal insight questions should be responded to similarly to in an interview. So they are constantly telling us that, when you are asked the question, tell me about yourself, you wouldn't respond with like a poem or an elaborate story, or you wouldn't include a hook, to grab the reader's attention. You would kind of just go right into it. So your responses should be direct, straightforward, and you should get to the point, right? It's your opportunity to really tell them about you, your story. And because the UCs don't require interviews as part of the admissions process or letters of recommendation, this is really their one opportunity to get to know you outside of your academics, outside of your application. They want to get to know, your personality and how you handle challenges and what type of character you have or what kind of person you are. So it's really your opportunity to shine. You should share your story. So avoid talking about, other people too much. Again, this is their one chance to really get to know you, to get to know the kind of person that you are. So you want to really keep your personal insight question responses to talking about yourself. So it should be about your experiences, your challenges, achievements, triumphs, values. You want to maximize your voice. We encourage that you use I and my statements. And by the end of your personal insight question response, excuse me, sorry, the reader should really feel like they've gotten to know you better by the end of it. So you want to avoid giving, like surface level information. You don't want to keep things too general. You don't want to not include examples about what you're trying to say. So if you're talking about, what makes you stand out in terms of an applicant applying to the University of California, you want to provide them with examples of how you have determination, of why you're so driven, of why you're so passionate about a certain academic subject. So you don't want to keep things too general. You don't want to just say things. You want to back it up with, concrete evidence and concrete examples. These are some additional tips to consider. So an activity that you can actually do to really help you with getting started on your personal insight questions is to work with a friend or work with a family member and have someone interview you. So you can choose 4 prompts, for example, that you're interested in responding to, and you can just have a friend or a family member ask you, why is it that, or how do you stand out in terms of applying to the University of California? Or if you choose the challenge question and you want them to ask you about, a challenge that you've overcome, you can have someone ask you those questions and then you just naturally respond to them. And then what you can do is record yourself and then hear it back afterwards. And that's how you can kind of get started. Because again, ultimately, these should be treated as interview questions. And we actually had the UCLA admissions counselor come to Mountain View one year and do this with students in person. And students found it to be really helpful. So they pulled up their personal insight question responses and they were paired up with a partner and they just kind of had to like go right into it. And then it also gets you in the mindset of not treating these as like a traditional essay, again, with like an attention grabber, an introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Sorry. Okay. You can definitely expand on an extracurricular activity. So this is a common question that students usually ask me is, I'm already including all of these extracurriculars in the activity section. Is it fine if I go into more depth into one of my activities in my personal insight question? And the answer is yes, definitely. So it's totally fine to go into more depth about an extracurricular within your personal insight question. And the UCs are actually used to this because ultimately, students are very involved and sometimes you find an activity or, a sport or whatever it is that you're involved with, and it is a huge part of your life and it's something that's very valuable to you. You identify with it a lot. And so it makes sense that you want to delve more deep into that topic within a PIQ. Totally fine. And again, it's almost like expected for a lot of students to do that. Some additional things to avoid are fluffy language, exaggerated details, poor grammar, too many details about what you did and not enough about how it impacted you or how it affected you or what you took from that experience. It's fine to include background information to provide context and to make sure that they understand, the situation or the circumstance that you're trying to explain. But you want to make sure that you continue to expand more about yourself than provide too much background detail. You also want to avoid using the same topic for all of your responses. So for example, if you are in soccer and soccer is your life and you absolutely love it, try to avoid talking about soccer in all of your PIQs, right? It's fine if you talk about a topic more than once, if it affected you in a different or unique way, and you can speak to it in a different light. I think that's okay because they'll still learn about you, in different ways, depending on how you respond to these questions. But I have seen students, talk about one extracurricular in all 4 of their PIQs. And you want to remember that the UCs, they receive some of them receive 80,000 plus applications. And it can start to get repetitive, if you start to talk about the same topic over and over again. So try to change it up. Try to include different topics to speak about. These are some things that you should highlight. So again, it really should be about, what you learned, what you got out of the experience, not so much about what you did, but more so how it affected or impacted you. And then you want to try to focus on your high school years. So if you go into depth about an extracurricular activity and maybe you started participating in that activity in middle school and it led to high school, that's fine too. But if you started it in middle school and it maybe stopped freshman year of high school, I would avoid talking about it. I would try to stick to truly your high school experiences. Okay, so these are the prompts. I won't go through all of them, but there's one on leadership, talking about a creative side that you have. There's one about talking about your greatest skill or talent, an academic, how you've taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity, describe the most significant challenge you faced, beyond what has been shared in your application, what do you believe makes you stand out as a strong candidate? So you have, again, 4 to choose from, 4 out of 8. Okay, so now I'm going to have us complete an activity. So this is the case studies portion of today's presentation. And this is the same content that the University of California actually gives to counselors and college and career coordinators when we go to their conferences. So the UCs put on this really nice conference where they give us case studies, and then they ask us to determine whether or not this real life personal insight question that was submitted, whether or not we feel it was a missed opportunity or if it added value to the student's application. So I'm going to have you guys take just 2 minutes right now. So it's 12:13. We'll end at 12:15. So go ahead and read this personal insight question response, and then I'm going to ask you all if you thought it was a missed opportunity or if it was added value. And this was a response to the academic subject question. Okay, so hopefully that was enough time to read through that one. So Laura, do you mind adding this link to the chat box? Hopefully this will work. If not, I can just ask you all to send in your response in the chat. But based on that personal insight question response, go ahead and vote and let me know if you thought it was a missed opportunity or if it added value to the student's application.
Could you go back to the slide where with the link real quick?
Yes.
So www.wooclap.com. Okay, good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So, oh, okay, it's about half and half. So about 50% thought it was a missed opportunity, 50% thought it was added value. So for whoever thought it was added value, can you just maybe in the chat box, or if you want to come off of mute, let me know why you felt like it was added value? No? Someone wanted to?
I can read what's in the chat
Okay,
anonymously.
great.
So one student said that it added value because the author was direct in what they did and how it affected their thinking and interests. Another student said that she talked about how she helped people in her own unique way. And then another student said it described the person's motivation.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, so this one actually, it was added value. And this is again directly from the University of California. So they said that, you know, the student provided a timeline of their thought process and really took you through that timeline. The student chose a specific topic, which was dance. So sometimes students will, when they're responding to these questions, sometimes students want to talk about multiple topics within one PIQ, but I think that can be hard to follow sometimes. So it's helpful to kind of stick to one topic and just kind of dive deep into that one topic. The student tied her experience into her or his AP psychology class. They found a program and did more research on Parkinson's disease. It led them to look for a summer neuroscience program where they worked on a project on brainwaves and sleep cycles. It talked about their hopes in continuing studying this in college. And you get a sense of the student's passion and drive. So overall, the student provided good concrete examples. They talk about, you know, how they just took everything a step further and really went above and beyond to explore this academic subject. Okay, can everyone still see my screen? Good? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we're going to go through another case study. This student responded to the significant challenge question. So again, we'll take another 2 minutes to review this, and I'll ask you again if you thought it was a missed opportunity or added value. Okay, so again, Laura, if you don't mind adding the link to the chat box, I'll have you all take another poll. And again, you're letting me know if you felt like that was a missed opportunity or it added value to the student's application. Cool. Missed opportunity, added value. Okay, so 92% thought it was a missed opportunity, 7% thought it was added value. So this one was a little bit more tricky. The student definitely, and I think why some people might feel like it was a missed opportunity is because the student did talk a lot about like kind of the background information at first, and maybe about not so much about how they overcame the opportunity or how they overcame the challenge. But this one actually was in fact added value according to the UCs. So the student did explain their challenge and how it affected their academics. It clearly describes how they worked through the challenge and the steps that were taken to overcome it. They responded thoroughly. It added information that was useful to the reader. So I think that was the thing that they really appreciated about this one. So for this student in particular, when reviewing their academics, when looking at the transcript or the grades that the student entered in their application, there was a dip in the 10th grade year. So that means that freshman year, the student was doing exceptionally well. And then in 10th grade, they didn't have as strong of grades. So by giving this information to the UCs, it provided context as to what was happening in that 10th grade year. And in that time, the student was clearly facing depression. So if you are in a situation where you feel like you have something similar that you can talk about, or maybe you didn't do so well one year and you have kind of different reasons as to why that was the case, it's always extremely helpful to talk about that in a personal insight question, or in the additional comments section of your application, because again, it provides context and it gives them more information. So they take that into consideration when reviewing your application for admissions. So the student explained how they got out of their situation. So they were able to lean on others for help. They, were able to join a sport because they realized that, physical activity helps with serotonin and things like that. So the student took the time to figure out like, what can actually help me get out of this funk, and what can help me, be the best version of myself. And so overall, the student did provide enough context for the UCs, and they felt like it added value to the application. Okay, we're going to do another case study. The student responded to the question about greatest skill or talent. So let's go ahead and take 2 minutes. So it's 12:25. We'll end at 12:27. All right. So it's 12:27. So I'm going to ask you all to take the poll again. So here's the link. And you're letting me know if this was a missed opportunity or added value. And then Laura, if you don't mind adding that to the chat box. All right. So the majority thought this was a missed opportunity. Can someone unmute themselves or in the chat box just explain why they felt like this was a missed opportunity? Did anyone write in the chat or not yet?
Okay, couple here. Poor spelling at one point, talk too much about brother. Another one, it wasn't really about himself. A lot of it was unclear or talking about his brother. They seem to talk about the brother too much and his difficulties. Another comment, he also repeated himself a lot to fill up words maybe, and didn't make much sense. His brother dropped out of high school and didn't know basic math and reading, question mark.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, those were all really great explanations as to why this one was deemed a missed opportunity. So it was a good start to talking about a leadership example of helping out a family member who was in need, right? So the student talked about the brother, talked about how they had to tutor him in math and reading, but they didn't really talk about themselves, like some of you mentioned in the chat box. So the student could have added value to this PIQ by talking more about themselves than their brother. The UCs would have liked to hear more about the student and how carrying the responsibility of, taking care of the brother and tutoring the brother has affected them personally or academically. The student did not discuss obstacles they are facing and if these obstacles have affected them or their studies. Overall, this is an example of how a student talks too much about someone else. So again, if after you read your response, you feel like maybe the reader doesn't actually get a better idea of who you are as a person, then that means you need to go back and add more detail about, yourself and your qualities. And if it's the challenge question, for example, how you overcame that challenge, the steps that you took to overcome it, and how you've grown by the end of it, right? Sometimes students will end on a negative note and they'll just say, oh, it was a really horrible experience, and then kind of just end it there. You always want to end on a positive note. So if you do talk about a challenge, like what did you learn from that challenge? How did you grow from it? How are you a better person now today? Great, you guys are doing really great. Okay, so this is the fourth case study. This student responded to the last PIQ, which is what makes you stand out when applying to the University of California. So this one's pretty short, so we'll just take a minute for this one. Okay, Laura, if you don't mind adding that link to the chat. So I'll ask you guys again, if you thought that was added value or missed opportunity. Okay, awesome. So most of you could agree that that was a missed opportunity. So the UCs did deem this one as a missed opportunity. So great job for catching that. They said that, you know, the student did a good job at explaining how they feel like they really know themselves by using words such as perseverance, intelligent, connections and relationships, strengths and weaknesses. But the student didn't really explain how they have perseverance or what their strengths and weaknesses are, right? They kind of just said all these things, but didn't back it up with proof. So they could have added value by talking about, you know, what were those obstructions throughout their life that made them persevere? What were their strengths and weaknesses? How did they foster connections and relationships in their life? And just overall, I feel like this one was really short and it didn't provide enough background or details about them, right? Or it didn't really give the reader enough information about who they are as a person or their personality or how they handle situations, right? Again, these should be treated as interview questions, and the UCs are not sitting in front of you asking you to tell them more, right? They can't call you and say, hey, what did you mean by this? Or can you go into more detail about this situation that you brought up? So within that, you know, 350 response, try to give them as much information as you can so that they are getting to know you better. Okay, so this one's a little blurry, but this is the final one that we'll do, and then we'll just take one more poll. So we'll give this one 2 more minutes. So it's 12:34 right now. We'll end at 12:36. All right, so here's the final poll that I'll have you all take.
Sorry, could you go back really quickly?
Oh, yep. Okay. Awesome. Great job, everyone. You guys are really getting the hang of it. So yeah, this one was added value. And can someone tell me why they thought it was added value in the chat box?
All right, great. We've got some responses. So person talked about their accomplishments and added entertaining words. They provided the necessary background info and explained exactly what they did to solve the problem and ensure the club would thrive in the future. There were a lot of concrete details on what they did, which demonstrated their leadership.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. So this one was deemed as added value. So the student talked about how they took initiative, they grew the club from 6 to 50. It's a great leadership example. They talked about how they took on this challenging task and they, ended up successful on the other side of it. They really went above and beyond to ensure that others understood financial literacy. It clearly addresses the work they did to help the club thrive, and it really displays the students' determination, passion, and dedication. So sometimes when you're responding to these, you might feel like, oh, does this sound like too braggy or like conceited? But this is the place to kind of brag about yourself, to talk about your accomplishments, to talk about how amazing and wonderful you are, right? This is like your pitch to the UCs being like, this is why I think I'd be a good fit for you. Like I was able to accomplish all these things, right? Or I'm able to handle challenges really well and like come out really like strong on the other end of it. And I tell students this too, when you're applying for a job, you wouldn't be too modest, right? Like that's not a time where you want to hold back. You want to get the job. So you're going to talk about all of your accomplishments. You're going to say how great and amazing and wonderful you are, and then give examples as to why that's the case. So it's the same thing for these UC personal insight questions. This is the time to brag. This is the time to really like hype up what you've done and, highlight those really amazing things that I know all of you have done throughout your time in high school. All right, so these are some final tips to be mindful of. So these are some things that you should do. Definitely proofread and edit. Select a prompt, again, that you connect with, that you feel like you relate to. Seek feedback. So definitely ask a few people to review your personal insight questions. You can reach out to myself or Laura at Los Altos, and we both have college counselors at both Mountain View and Los Altos. So if you want to reach out to our college counselor at Mountain View, her name is Leslie Felipe. The college counselor at Los Altos is Angela Price. Students should also talk about experiences that are personal. Tie your experiences to academics if possible. Use your own words, be honest and truthful. And then students should not feel like you must use every single word, feel like you must have a hardship or write about COVID-19 or the social justice movement. Unless it really has affected you in a way, in a significant way, then you don't have to talk about it in a PIQ. If it affected you maybe in an indirect way, you can definitely talk about this in the additional comment section at the end of the personal insight question section of the application. Use the additional comment section for another PIQ, so you should not do that. You should not summarize news stories. So you don't have to, there's so much going on in the world right now, but the UCs have made it clear that they don't need you to kind of just like summarize news stories or tell them your opinion on what's happening. You should only be talking about one of these, challenges that the world is facing right now if it has significantly impacted you. And then you should not treat these as traditional essays, right? Again, thinking about these as interview questions. So here are some final takeaways. The personal insight questions help add clarity, depth, and meaning to the student's application. Students aren't just another number, they are humans. So again, they want to learn more about you besides, your academics and your grades and things like that. They want to learn more about you as a human being. Admission counselors would like to know, again, you beyond your academic record. GPAs do not make up a student, their life experiences do. And these are just some additional resources. So the University of California has put up some really great resources to help you get started with the UC Personal Insight questions. They have this little video here that you can watch. They have some worksheets that you can download that just give you some advice and guidance on getting started for each one of the PIQs. So this presentation will be posted after today, so you will have access to this. And then the University of California, Santa Barbara actually does a really great job at providing workshops and presentations to help guide students through the application. So this is a link to their events page, and they're actually having on Thursday, October 1st, between 4 and 5, they're having a UC application and personal insight question webinar. So if you would like to join that one, you can just go onto this website and register. So those are some really great resources. And again, College and Career Center staff at both school sites are here to help you, and we're more than happy to help you. So if you want to reach out to us and ask us to provide feedback, we can definitely do that and schedule an appointment with you one-on-one. All right, and then just as a reminder, Los Altos has a really great Instagram page that you can follow. Here is their the name of their account. And then both school sites have really great websites where we post scholarship opportunities, volunteer opportunities that we hear about, different summer programs and things like that. So definitely check out our websites for additional resources. And here is what is on the horizon. So we have on October 7th, Ms. Duran will be discussing how to go about choosing an admissions decision, whether it's early action, early decision, or regular decision, and she'll be discussing the pros and cons for each. On October 14th, I'll be giving a tutorial on how to complete the CSU application. October 21st is a workshop on completing the UC application. So for that one, I'll mostly probably cover entering your grades and then the extracurriculars and activities section, because those two seem to be the most complicated parts of the application. And then October 28th will be a presentation on financial aid. All right, so now.
Can I add one more thing before you stop recording?
Mm-hmm.
Just that tonight, Ethan Sawyer, the college essay guy, is also offering a webinar on personal insight questions. So it could be interesting to, if you can attend tonight, and then you can go to the UCSB one tomorrow. So I'll drop a link for that too. Okay, that's all.
Awesome. So I'm going to stop recording.